Hi, I'm Catherine, and this is Tuning In. Each week, we're going to dive into soulful conversations about intuition, spirituality, holistic wellness, and even some energetics. Whether you're looking to lead consciously or create a thriving soul-aligned business, this is your space to tune into your being, raise your level of consciousness, and align with your purpose. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get started. Welcome back to Tuning In. I have another lovely guest with me today. I'm so excited to have a conversation. This is the first time that we've actually met, so we have a lot to talk about. I'm really excited. Welcome, Helen Millar. I want to share a little bit about your bio here, but I'll put the full bio because she has done so many things, and that will be in the show notes. So from self-sabotage to global impact, Helen Millar has emerged as a maverick transformation coach and entrepreneur who doesn't just talk about change, she is actually embodying it. With nearly 2 decades of international coaching experience, an award-winning acting career, and a profound journey of personal healing, Helen has become a sought-after guide for business leaders, creatives, entrepreneurs, and pattern disruptors ready to revolutionize their inner and outer worlds. Hello, Helen. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great, thank you. I'm in sunny Miami, and it's a nice contrast to usual January in the UK, so I'm doing really well, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. I was going to say, where are you calling in from today? So Miami, love that.
I've been traveling a lot in the last 6 months. I've come from New York, and so that was very cold, and so it's very nice to be here.
Definitely. I know I'm in Canada, so it is very cold, very cold. So I'm a little bit jealous of the Miami, the Miami piece. So I was looking over all of your accomplishments and your journey and what you've kind of shared with me ahead of time. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. But I really want to start off okay, in your full bio, you talk about speaking at Oxford, Cambridge, London business schools. Tell me a little bit about what it is that you speak about there. What are you talking to them about?
Great. So in that world, which is the corporate world, which is I'm speaking to executive MBA students, international, their 40s, 50s, have had a very successful career and either transitioning in their career points or expanding their businesses or looking to deeply network. And I speak to them primarily about emotional intelligence and conscious leadership. And sometimes I also talk about communication with impact, but my specialist is the emotional intelligence piece, which is, I think it's conscious awakening. It's an awakening journey, but I use language which is not scary or won't alienate those people. And I think it's a real privilege. And I think it's a great way to help affect change on the planet from people maybe at the top of a pyramid who can shift people working for them in a whole company culture versus just working with individuals, which I also do, and who can affect their lives in a smaller circle. So I think it's really powerful work, and sometimes people aren't expecting it to be. They open their laptops and they sit back to take notes, and hours later there's been maybe a lot of tears and some curveballs, and I really enjoy it.
That's amazing. I was going to ask, what is the response like to a lot of these people? I mean, myself coming from the corporate world, if someone came in and started talking about emotional intelligence, I know that there would be a few people who would say, this is a waste of time. This doesn't make sense. But leadership and business, they're changing. Like, we are moving in a whole brand new direction. And I'm finding, even in my own work, that the sustainability aspect of business, of leadership, comes back to the inner world that we're, leading from. Who are these leaders and where are we leading from? So very interesting. And how did you get into that?
So to how they respond, really, I'd say 95% of people go with it and allow themselves to move into that emotional, sensitive, not normally talked about, especially not talked about a workspace. there's a few people who remain closed, but I have to trust the timing and that we come to this when we're ready to be there. And I'm not there to like crowbar anybody into spaces they don't want to be in. I don't think that's healthy or helpful. And I think my real depth of my work, I love working with people over a prolonged period of time, because I think that's how you can really help somebody feel safe to own and go through that quite painful journey, often of changing your compass point of your life. I would call it shifting from head to heart, but there's other language around that about being faith-based rather than fear-based, and in a culture that is fear-based. So the way people respond is often with relief, curiosity, maybe excitement, and I think the danger, if it's a one-off, that people can then not follow through with doing the work. But I think there is a global awakening to spiritual language on the planet, and I think there is a deeper appetite for truth and authenticity, and especially with the rise of AI. And one of my speaking topics is emotional intelligence is the leadership edge in the age of AI, because the more artifice there is and the less the depth, the more we crave it. And so, because we are deep people, and we can only live a life of fulfillment so far when we're using dopamine, Netflix takeaways to try to meet our needs. And actually it's a much deeper sense of connection to life that we need to sustain ourselves and enjoy the ride and have the tools to get through all the hard stuff. And so how I got into it was, I feel like I was born an actor. Like, it was all I ever wanted to do. I was like the little blonde kid, and they were like, what are you going to do when you grow up? I want to be an actress. And then I never stopped saying that. And I never wanted to be famous, but I was very passionate about the power of story to drive compassion, to drive people, to help people open, to shift to their heart, was my language at the time. And I was, at that point in my life, also very political as I became a teenager. But I saw politics as being very ineffective. But I saw that when I went to the theatre or read a book or went to see a film, something could grab me and I could have my opinions changed and my idea of the world shaped with so much more immediacy and power, and especially live performance, you're going through that journey with other people. So I thought this was like the meaning of life. And I love the fact that in Greek times, if people committed crimes, rather than putting them in prison, they'd be sentenced to so many nights at the theatre. Because the power of going through an emotional journey, you would be able to understand the impact of your actions, and you would automatically change your behavior. It would teach compassion, it would teach empathy in real time, rather than locking somebody up. And I still think that's true. I think the power of the arts is huge. I also think that's why it's undervalued and not monetized in a way that's helpful globally, really, because I think it impedes awakening when we don't have access to the arts, and it stops us being able to connect to ourselves. So how I got into this work is passionate about acting, workaholic in that space. And I went to a very prestigious school that only took 8 women from around the world, 20 men, trying to balance out there's a lot less work for women in the industry. And I survived 3 years there. Its nickname was Trauma Centre, and it lived up to its name. And I came out of that experience. I wasn't a favourite at the school. I had quite a rough ride there, but I won a very prestigious award across the UK, and that opened some doors. And I was suddenly invited to go to work with the C-suite, the CEOs, CFOs, CMOs of American Express, to run a workshop to help them. I think they thought like, oh, cool young actress will come in and do a bit about, communication and like presentation skills. And I don't think they were expecting me to come in with the kind of like the depth of like, the power of like, this body, this instrument that we have. And I was really like, what am I going to teach these like millionaires? And, then I realized that I had a lot to share. And I found it fascinating to meet people that I would never normally meet. And as an actor, other human beings are like my resource material. So that was exciting. And I think I had a natural aptitude to the work, and then consequently was sponsored to do a lot of training, psychometric trainings, etc., so I could fit the briefs for what different businesses were looking for. And that led me into coaching, and then in different areas, almost sort of human-centric, what were called soft skills. And through that, I then had my own spiritual awakening in 2014. So then I started and became a Buddhist leader and was looking at a lot of plant medicine and tried to bring an even more depth to the work. And then the emotional intelligence piece was quite a hard push, as you said, in the corporate world prior to the lockdowns. And then there became an appetite for that deeper work. And so that is how I've ended up speaking in those spaces.
Amazing. Okay, let's go to Buddhist leader. Because, yeah, let's talk about that. So your spiritual awakening, well, just in general, this is fantastic and it's so amazing, but I can feel like there is a depth there. There is, the inner work it's not all rainbows and lollipops and fun and excitement. So tell me about your spiritual awakening, moving into Buddhism. And do you still practice Buddhism, or have you?
No, I left the practice in 2021. Deep respect for it, changed my life, but I always believed in God, and I didn't form that through classical religion, but my basis now is very much in a conversation with God on a daily basis rather than anything else. But the framework and the fundamental philosophy was life-changing for me of Buddhism.
Mm-hmm. So how did you... Yeah, tell me about your spiritual awakening. How did that come to be?
So I was raised as an atheist. I believed in nothing. I wasn't really raised with a framework of how to make sense of life or how to deal with things, and consequently had quite a traumatic upbringing, childhood, and used whatever I could find to make me feel better, which was a lot of bad choices. And I went through a series of a lot of unhealed trauma, attracting a lot of unhealed trauma in my 20s. I nearly died several times. I tried to kill myself 3 times. And I went to Glastonbury Festival with a guy I'd met on Tinder who... I didn't know that Glastonbury was the heart chakra of the earth at that point. I didn't know what a chakra was. I had never done any plant medicines. I didn't know what they were. And I was given some psychedelic mushrooms, and I thought, what are mushrooms going to do? I know how to take drugs. And I lost everybody, but I've had this bag of mushrooms and I didn't know how many to take. And I ate the whole bag, and then had a very strong... Yeah, there was a lot. It's not in the bag. It's a big bag. And 3 days later, I feel like I was Helen as I was meant to be. Like, it was my brain pre-trauma. I'd been rewired. And I remember just feeling a deep, deep sense of peace about being alive. And I was like, I'd always been confused. Like, how can people be happy? Like, really happy? Like, not happy because they've had a bottle of wine, but like, how can people actually just be happy to be here? And I'd never experienced that. I was always in crisis. And that experience just totally changed how I saw the world. I deeply connected to nature. I suddenly believed in God. I suddenly saw everything as alive. I saw myself as connected with other people. And I realized that there was a new way of being on the planet. And that took me into a journey of healing a lot of medical conditions that I was told I'd been medicated for life, that I used alternative healing for. I had narcolepsy, which saw me collapse on a regular basis, banned from driving. I was told I could never have kids. Heavily medicated with that. Plant medicine helped me reverse all of those symptoms, understand what was underpinning them all. And the person who I went to Glastonbury Festival with was also a Nichiren Buddhist. So at the same point, actually I ended up at the festival without a ticket 5 days before I got my ticket through chanting, because you're supposed to test this chant works. I knew nothing about Buddhism. I thought it was nonsense, but I thought chanting sounded cool. And so I did it for a little bit, and then I got the ticket and I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, if this works, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to and do all these things. And so Yeah, I didn't understand at all what was going on after the experience at Glastonbury, but I found that when I chanted, I felt connected. So I started going to meetings to understand what was going on. And I just felt this compulsion to keep going. And I found the framework unbelievably helpful, the philosophy, and I went all in. As much as I'd gone all into my acting career, I went all into Buddhism. And quite quickly, I became a Buddhist leader. And then I did a 2-year dedicated program. And over 8 years, I think about 6 of those years, I was supporting hundreds or thousands of women in London, volunteering 16, 17 hours a week around work. Most of my weekends were full time supporting people. And that also taught me a lot about coaching and working with people at totally different life experiences from all over the world. I'm still friends with people from all over the world. Yeah, through that practice, and it was extraordinary, and is an extraordinary practice if people are seeking.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, that must have really expanded your I don't want to say capacity, but just your connections, right? With people and really understanding how, like, where people are coming from, from all of these different walks, all of these different places. Like, what better way to get into coaching, really, right?
Yeah,
That's
I mean, I was already coaching, but it gave me a much deeper heart centered connection to people. At the fundamental, like one of the cores of that practice is the deep respect for the dignity of life. So no matter what anyone has done, what you've done, you are worthy of respect for being alive and being a human being, and that you can transform anything you've been through this practice, past, present, and future. And this rhythm of life that you connect to when you chant empowers you and brings forward your natural wisdom, courage, compassion, and energy. And so there are no rules about how you should live or what you should do, but that by chanting, you will find your own answers. So it's deeply empowering. And it's very kind of action orientated. It's not about withdrawing from life. It's about being a Buddha in daily life. So whether you want to like scream at someone in the supermarket or your boss or start a business, it's like, how do you access your Buddhahood state in every area? It's very demanding. Like there's no kind of it's always about pushing harder and trying harder. So that spoke to my nature at the time very strongly because I was in strive and very in my masculine.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about the head to heart and how that sort of came to be. Is this something that came out of your spiritual awakening, and or like tell me about it?
Yeah, so this kind of very, and like a bit like a I don't know if you guys had the advert for Energizer batteries, but like the bunny that would never stop jumping around because it had Energizer batteries. Like that was me. I was the bunny that never stopped. I didn't sleep. I was out every night. I was doing stuff every day. I was like in the gym, writing a book, like, and it was coming from a deeply unresolved, ungrounded place. But I was achieving a lot and doing a lot, and I was enjoying myself. And so I then, when I started working with some of the really deep plant medicines immediately without knowing much about them, deeply grateful to them, but the experience itself was often very traumatic. And I was used to experiencing very intense trauma and very intense acting. And years into my plant medicine journey, people kept talking to me about cacao, and I kept thinking, what's chocolate going to do? I'd also come from a place of starving myself for years, so I never ate chocolate. And it was cacao, when I first had ceremonial grey cacao, that really got me into my heart and allowed me to feel safe in my feminine, which I never did. I had a skinhead at points. I wore black, I wore boots. I was fighting the world because I hadn't been safe. I thought I had to fight my way to everything. And cacao really helped me get into my feminine and soften and help me take kind of like fierce psychological structure and embody it. And it helped me to move into trust and flow and prayer. And so I have a cacao business as well as coaching. And because I think it's a medicine I'd love to see in boardrooms rather than coffee. I think drives connection, it drives creativity, it stops competition, unhealthy competition, and that kind of hustle silo culture, which I know so well. Head to Heart came from when I wanted to rebrand what I was doing and take it much more into my own hands rather than just working for other people. As a freelancer, I called my company Heart Healer, and as in you heal your own heart. Not that I don't call myself a healer, and Head to Heart Living and Head to Heart Leadership is the strap line. I've now got 3 separate companies because the work I've done has grown, but that was the inception point.
Okay. So in that in that work, like, I mean, I'm familiar with the mind body connection and moving from the mind to the body. Is that similar to the type of work that you do within that, or?
Yes, it is. And listening to your body, and I think somatic work's great. And I'm massive, like, health conscious. I think the more we can look after our body, the clearer our connection is, and the clearer our thoughts it can be. It doesn't have to be, but it can help. And also, wellness really makes me happy. It aligns with a lot of my values. So yes, the body, but I think the heart. Really, for me, like the heart center, I think that is like the seat of our soul. I think it's how we connect to God. I think it's how God connects to us. I think our mind can be, I'm not the first person to say it's a wonderful servant and not a great master. I think we live in a world that has prioritized intellect over intuition and over feeling, and I think we need a balance of both. And I think all the biggest, scary decisions that have unlocked my life have come from my heart, have come from the whispers of my heart that are hard to hear, which is why you need space and time to kind of listen to them, or we're deeply, deeply in crisis, and then you get a kind of scream. And I like to work with people. I often meet people when they're here in the scream moments, but I like to put content out and include people so that we don't have to get to that kind of breaking point before we can find other ways to pivot and shift how we listen to ourselves, I would say listen to God, but you don't have to have that framework or language to work with me, and how we can really start to trust the deeper currents of where we're guided to go, because I think that is our ultimate fulfillment blueprint on the planet, how we're here to serve, how we're going to be really nourished and live a life, look back on our life and be really proud and pleased with what we've done, versus, having built an empire through fear and head and lack, and then feel quite empty.
Yeah, no, that's so great. This is perfect, because for the entrepreneurs that listen to the podcast, this question's more so for them. And I think even for myself, embodying businesses, I mean, you said you run three different businesses, and it's expanding. And I would love to know, and I know my listeners would love to know too, how do you balance it all? How do you create 3 separate businesses and expand in the way that you have and travel and not get caught up in always being in the masculine, right? I don't know what your human design is, but I'm feeling like you're probably generator type.
Yeah.
Manifesting generator or generator. Yeah. So you can tell, I work with I'm a manifester, but I work with a lot of manifesting generators and generators who are go all the time, have 7 things on the go. How do you keep in that feminine? How do you bring that into the behind the scenes of your work? Because I know what you are teaching and what you are coaching is bringing in that balance, but just for yourself as a conscious leader, like, how do you embody that as a business owner and entrepreneur too?
So I really sort of listen to myself in seasons rather than, and I've learned that my life doesn't kind of work like in a straight line. No, I don't think anybody's does, right? We can try to force it to. The corporate structure would have you think it does, but I don't think it does. And I don't find trying to make that work, especially as a woman, it works for me. So for example, it's January right now. There's normally sort of launches that I'm doing and promotions and things for this time of year, but as it was getting into the autumn, I was listening to my prayer, and I was getting there's going to be, I've just done a very intense year with Tony Robbins in a circle, traveling the world, working with a lot of entrepreneurs, all different disciplines. And so I've been learning a lot, but I haven't been hugely productive. I've had a lot of one-on-one clients, but I haven't done, and I've done 2 programs. Okay, maybe I've done more than I have. I've also written a book, but I haven't done, like, I set myself quite big goals, but I have to trust also that what happens is where I need to be. So, for example, what does that mean? Right now, I feel like I haven't done anything huge in a month. I've been investing in my relationship. I spent a lot of last year investing in my relationship. I've been traveling a lot and meeting a lot of people, and I haven't had a huge amount of output. I felt intuitively 2026 is going to be much more output. But in this January, I feel like lots of stuff is still shifting. It's only the 7th. And so I'm just resting until I get clarity, because I often find that if I try to push things, like I've done launches, just because every January you always do this, Helen, that would be doing it in my own strength rather than allowing like God or the divine or grace to be the wind underneath my wings. So it's often I have to go to quite uncomfortable places, either financially or kind of like the idea that when I'm productive, I'm better. So to listen, but then if I get a green light, then I'll go all in. So then my the hours I'm working and my priority over like friendship or connection will be like, no, work. And then I will have spaciousness. And for me, my system just works much better like that. And I think it's also how creativity works. It's like we need space to observe and to witness and to listen. And then it's like, and now write the book. So I was sitting on like what I thought were 3 books for 4 years. And then in 13 days, I wrote 100,000 words because it turned out there were 1. And I'm now got to edit and find a publisher, etc. So it's, for me, little drip feeding work or trying to have a schedule that is 9 to 5 just doesn't work. And I want to have the freedom to be able to swim in the sea in the middle of the day if that's what I need. Otherwise, I could just work for somebody else and have them tell me what to do.
That's the whole point of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
I love that. I got so many chills as you were speaking, and that's my sign for alignment and for truth. And so I think you just gave a lot of people permission too to lean into the seasons and move with the flow of our energy and not feel like we have to push through something because that's what we think we have to do, or what, the industry says we have to do, or what we've done in the past potentially. But I also know that those seasons sometimes of like our quieter seasons, like you said, might have to take a cut financially sometimes, like they can bring up a lot internally. They bring up a lot of fear. And personally, like when I work with entrepreneurs, I do a lot of inner work with them as well and guiding them through those types of seasons. But how do you manage through that? How did you get to a point of acceptance for those seasons and not freak out and be like, what, like everything is going to collapse? How did you find the full trust in knowing that everything was going to work out, and, waiting for those green lights and trusting in them, knowing that they were coming? How did you get to that point?
I mean, it's always it's a daily work in progress, really.
Yeah.
It's a daily work in progress, and it's now sort of tried and tested. But fundamentally, I did a huge, sort of very spiritual sort of decade of my life, and I didn't look at money or finances. I had that as something that was wrong and alien and like part of the machine and all this terrible language. And I wasn't raised to believe, that rich people were bad people, and if you were virtuous, you'd be poor, and all this stuff that was just BS. And so when I started to heal my money story, 2019, I think I went kind of quite quickly, I went all in on that, because I suddenly realized the power and how much I'd been lying to myself, but also how painful it had been to be broke for decades. And if I had more, I could do more and help more. And so, but also money is like, as an energy, likes to have its own freedom. It likes to be here, and then it moves. And the more I think we can get comfortable with letting it come and letting it go, the more that we can steward, because it's not our money. Essentially, I believe everything comes from God. It's not or you could say the universe. It's not your boss, it's not your parents, it's not your spouse. It's like these are just different taps into the same bathtub, but the water source is the creator. So the more that you can be, okay, well, let me have more taps around my bath. And so then I don't freak out when one turns off, but the more I can be trust that like we live on an abundant planet and my needs are met. And the amount of money in my bank account doesn't determine my worth, but the more valuable I am to other people, the more money will be in my bank account. So how can I deepen into service rather than deepen into self in order to open to life? Because I think life rewards more life. So the more that you're creative and contributive, the more that you will be able to surrender and be held yourself. And the more we do that and the more we trust that, even if I mean, sometimes like, especially like with have business, like there's obligations for taxes and etc. I've watched my bank account kind of go into like quite scary places, but then like there's been a boom within 24 hours and it's like, I had no idea where that was coming from. But so I work with clients to help them trust that process. Not that you should try to make that happen, but that it's when you can feel that you're not in avoidance and you're not being lazy, but you're being guided to walk that very fine line. Like the more we can trust that, I think God often brings us our solution at the 11th hour because we grow in that trust. And if it had come in, a month early or whatever it is, 6 months early, then there's no need to deepen faith and there's no need to deepen trust and there's no growth. We only grow in we grow the most in the hardest points. So it's that. And the more that you do that and the more that happens, the more you learn to let go in those spaces. And also that you have the resources with you, that if it gets into like totally like chaos, you know that you've got enough within you to go, okay, well, let me just do a launch and let me do this and let me serve and let me create something, or let me get a job in a shop. Like there's going to be a way to make something happen. And it's that, and also like who's helped support me is I invested very heavily before I had property, before I had anything, before I even had a car. I put over half my life savings. I gave them all to a coach and said, help me sort out my money story because this is killing me. And because I lived in critique and tightness all the time. And working with her changed my life. And then again, working with Tony Robbins in this very high ticket entrepreneurial group. I felt God guiding me to do that. And I was like, there's so much money and also time and flights and hotels. But both of those decisions have absolutely changed my life unbelievably. I walk my talk. I don't encourage clients to do anything I don't do myself.
Yeah. I love that you said that. Like, it's in those really uncomfortable moments where, it really does push us to lean into that trust, because there is no other alternative at that point. And if we're always just given everything, then we don't get to experience that. That is really huge, and a great reminder for people who are in that right now, who are in that uncomfortable spot and are waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel, and are trusting that it's coming. And I love what you said too. It's like there's always another way. We are never not supported. It's like, get a job at a shop. You might have to take some time off. You might have to do something a bit different, whatever that looks like. You won't be stranded, if you can trust, if you can be able to look out those other windows, right? That we're always kind of like this tunnel vision. Open up another window, see what else you can see there. There's other opportunities too that can come in that way. So yeah, amazing. And I think that's a huge thing, a huge reminder as well is, you got to where you are today, not just on your own, which none of us can do this alone, right? We're not here to just, hunker down and do our thing. And we're here to learn from other people and put our trust in God and in other coaches and people who can support us in our growth and our expansion and everything. And so I love that you said, you don't know it all. You hired a coach and spent a lot of money, and even like with Tony Robbins and all of that, like that is dedication to the work and the growth too, that I think a lot of people need a little wake up call sometimes to recognize that, you know, you can only get so far in your own mind.
I think you can do things on your own. I just think it's far more miserable. It's far more painful. It takes a lot longer and it's much more expensive. It might feel like a scary amount of money to let go of at the beginning if you're working with someone who's, you know, charging their worth, because it's the financial, it's easy to see what you're losing. Like you can go, oh my God, I'm letting go of this money, which could do X, Y, and Z. But you don't always know what it is you're going to get. What I've realized is that what money represents is also like your energy and your focus. You can, like, also, I don't think you can consciously charge a lot if you haven't paid that and 10 times more than that yourself. Like I never ask anyone to pay nearly as much as I've ever paid myself. The money helps hold a container for the crucible for the transformation to happen, because it's not the way I work. It's not all psychological. It's much, much deeper than that. And if that isn't being held safely, it's a very murky, dangerous place to be. And if you're coaching and you're not charging enough for you to be able to safely do that work, like you need to be doing 20 clients a day, 10 clients a day, like you can't hold somebody in deep transformation. So that's also about self-value. And the way I work isn't for everybody. And I'm not critiquing anybody's way of charging, because I think we all deliver in different ways. But I think a lot of when people kind of tighten and don't want to spend or invest in themselves, it's interesting what that can show up about where you are and where your trust is. Because I used to be like that, but I didn't see things as an investment. I just saw things as like money leaving, and I should never spend money on anything. It's a similar, like I talk about attachment styles with money, and it was mirrored in my relationship with food. I felt like a good day was zero food, right? Rather than actually like needing to, you know, have nutrition and energy. And it's like, well, I have to spend money on myself in order to be able to help other people. I need to invest money in order to grow money. I need to, you know, all of those things. And yet my kind of very tight, unhealthy mindset was mirrored in relationship, in love, in food, in money. And I think, you know, when we pivot into a deeper, more grounded place, that brings more in, because we're more open.
Yeah. I really do see my own journey in you, actually, which is really interesting. Just in and around the whole food aspect and the scarcity, right? Of just like holding on and avoiding, or that anxiousness of, oh my gosh, like when is the next paycheck coming in, or when is this, you know, and not feeling safe to receive all of that. Yeah, it's really, really, the money aspect of it, I think, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship and you being paid for your services, it's a very personal experience, and very spiritual too. Like it's different than going and working for anybody else, because it is your work, it's your energy, it's your service, it's your exchange, right? That monetary exchange for the service, right? So there's something very, I call it spiritual. I'm like, this, somebody charging you for your services is a very spiritual experience, because, you know, this is your creation and somebody is connecting with that. And yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. But if your if your money story is that you are not enough, or, you know, the lack of worth is there, then things can get really cloudy and a little bit more tricky when it comes to receiving that money, or charging what you're worth, or being able to scale, or being able to grow and expand. So that's definitely something I see come up with a lot of entrepreneurs, for sure. Is that something that you work with your clients on quite a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I have a course called Not About the Money. Part of my book is about that, because the main reason I hear people say, and how I used to live was like, I can't afford it, or it's like, I would if it was cheaper, or like I'd go on a sales page and I'd just scroll down to the price. I wouldn't read actually even what it would I be buying. I'd just be like looking at money, and like a friend would say, I'm going on holiday, and my instant response would be, how much? You know, I just costed everything because I was living in such deep lack. And it's not, nothing is ever about the money. Like, a friend of mine, child got diagnosed with cancer. They were two. Terrible, terrible situation. The treatment wasn't available in their country. They had to go to the States, and it was going to cost $1 million for this treatment. But it's like, the price of your child's life is now £1 million, right? She
Yeah.
couldn't, $1 million. She wasn't in a place where she had access to that money by any stretch of the imagination. But she raised the money because the need was greater. And the child's now alive, and like 10 years later is very healthy. But it's like, when we really, like, that's why I generally meet people on their knees, is because it's only when we get to the most painful place that we're like, now I have to change. Because we will do anything, we will override our values and our beliefs to attach to the identity we have about ourselves. And then when we find that is not working, that's when we break open and seek help. But I don't think we have to get to the broken place to do that. I used to, but now I'm much better at course correcting, always seeking help, getting support. I constantly have a coach. I think it's helpful for coaches to have coaches, like psychologists, therapists always have to have a therapist. I think it's ethical. And I think that it's, the whole point of coaching is growth, right? So if you're not growing as a coach, then you're getting stuck yourself. Well, kind of in whatever you do, if you work in the medical field, or like, you want to be, like, life is constantly expanding. So if we're not moving, we're dying, essentially. So there's always more to know and experience and have fun without being unhappy with where you are in the present moment.
Definitely. Yeah. It's not that, we always, I think some people think, okay, if we always have to be in a state of growth, and it's like, not necessarily, but at the same time, if you are serving and you are creating, if you're just creating from the same thing over and over again, that's what your clients are also receiving. Right. So you have to be reading, you have to be, expanding your knowledge base, your education, and it doesn't have to be like, having new modalities every year or anything like that, but little things, and continuing that so that you can provide a service of that growth too for the people that you're working with. So yeah, I think that is absolutely on point with that.
Can I just add one thing? Because I think that
Yeah,
sometimes people might hear that and think, oh, I can never get off the treadmill. And I think sometimes stabilizing is growth, because that's a muscle you haven't stretched before. Or sometimes it's like, oh, the business is just going to do its thing for a while, but my growth area is then my health, or my sleep, or my connections, or my relationships, or my family. Or maybe I'm being really, like, growing loads in that space, and and business isn't doing so well, because I think we can't. I think it's human and it's natural for one thing to be doing this and another thing to be doing this. If it was all the same all the time, or all growing all the time in the same way, we'd be very bored.
Yes, definitely. I love that, actually. And even for myself, that was a huge realization, being a mother and an entrepreneur, and always having this idea that I could never be a successful entrepreneur because I have children. And it was this back and forth. And I was like, how am I going to be a great mom and be able to be successful? How is that? How can I do both? And it was never about doing both at the exact same time. We kind of go in and out, and sometimes it's like my kids are everything and the business takes a bit of a quiet pause and does its thing in the background as it needs to. And then sometimes there's massive growth in business and I am not full on with my children. And I've kind of realized that there's no guilt in any of that. And once I was able to release that, so much more became available to me, so much more support, so much more trust, so much more abundance, all of that in both areas. And yeah, it's like that with your health and all of the things. It's not like we're doing everything at once all of the time to grow and expand. Yeah, no, I fully get that. I love that. So you have one book right now that's written, or how many books do you have?
Yes, I have one book that's written. It's not out yet. I'm working on it. It's been birthed. It's now sitting there going, tend to me, because it's quite deep, and I want to make it as accessible as possible without diluting the depth of it. And so, I'm working on that. My aim is to mainstream publish rather than self-publish, so it may be a little while before it's out. But I was in conversations about having quite an exciting person give me a foreword yesterday, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I have a YouTube channel that was very active and is now fairly dormant. But I have podcasts and I have courses online. People can buy and work with me, and those were all live and recorded in real time. So it very much feels like you're there with me. And then if people would like to they can have a free consult with me, a clarity call. Because I work with people one-on-one at the moment. I have a program coming out later this year, but at the moment, one-on-one is how people can work with me if they want the live response.
Amazing. I love that. So good. I feel like people will be really interested in checking out all that you have to offer. Share with us what's something like that you're envisioning for the future of coaching, of conscious leadership, of where you see sort of the industry going, what your hopes are for entrepreneurs, the people that you're working with. What's your light?
So I am looking forward to ceremonial grey cacao being brought into the mainstream, which is what I'm rebranding at the moment, because I think that is a deeply helpful tool that maybe people won't connect to spiritually, but it'll be doing the work anyway. But, especially for people who have ADHD, perimenopause, people very health conscious, that's a medicine that I think people can meet in a different way. My book, I would love to reach as many people as it can. And I would like to be increasing the people that I speak to. And I'm just in conversations at the moment about doing some work in the Middle East, which is where I never thought I would necessarily be going, but I'm very excited that there is an appetite for my work there. And just the continual joy I get from working with people deeply, personally, and seeing the absolute transformation that they go through. Some clients have been working with me for years and their lives are just so exciting. So I vicariously enjoy helping people live their best possible life.
Beautiful. Amazing. So we'll end it on that note, but I love this conversation so much. And I'm so happy to have connected with you and to share in this conversation. Is there anything else that you want to promote or share, or anywhere else people can find you? I know you mentioned your YouTube channel.
You can find me on Instagram as Helen Heart Healer. I'm most active there. I have a Substack as well, Head to Heart Living. And I also, probably for your audience, which might be, especially as entrepreneurs, I have 2 courses on my website. One is not about the money, and another one is called, which I've run many times, it's called Prosperous Heart. And that is really for entrepreneurs who want to balance financial acumen with spiritual conscious business. So you can pause it, you can go through, it talks a lot about like the taxes and the finances and how to do things sustainably, as well as the intuitive, spiritual, soulful way of growing and sharing your work and being well paid. And I equally work with people who are in corporate and want to leave because they no longer are fulfilled, as I do with people who are very mission-based, but maybe financially can't work out how to make that flow happen whilst doing what they love.
Beautiful. Yeah, I feel that there will be a lot of people interested in those courses for sure. That sounds fantastic. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Helen, for coming on Tuning In. It's been so great to get to know you, and maybe we'll have another chat sometime soon.
I'd love that, Catherine. It's been an absolute pleasure. It feels like I've met souls on the path. So thank you.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. We'll chat soon.
Great. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for listening. If you loved this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. It really does help us reach more souls who are ready to live their most aligned life just like you. Until next time, keep tuning into your inner wisdom. Embrace all of the beautiful magic of who you are. Bye.